Bryophytes. Bryophytes do not have vascular tissue, although some do have specialized tissues for transporting water. They do not have true roots or leaves. They have spores that contain the DNA of the plant and do not have seeds. Furthermore, bryophytes do not produce fruits. Pteridophytes. Pteridophytes contain vascular tissue for transporting food and water. They possess true roots and have true leaves. Like bryophytes, pteridophytes have spores and do not produce fruit.
Gymnosperms. It has vascular tissues for transport of water and nutrients, but companion cells are absent. They possess root and shoot systems. They also possess naked seeds and cones. Seeds of gymnosperms are not enclosed, but are instead open to the surrounding environment. Fruits are structures that develop from maturing flower ovaries, and seeds develop from ovules inside the ovaries. Therefore, since gymnosperms have no ovaries, they do not produce real fruits. Angiosperms. The female part of angiosperms produce fruits, as this is the ripened ovary. They also have vascular tissue. Angiosperms possess true leaves, true stems, and true roots. Angiosperms have to undergo a process called pollination before they can reproduce. Angiosperm seeds are found in the flower. In order for the angiosperm eggs to be fertilized, they first have to be pollinated and will then develop into a seed in an ovary that is usually in a flower. Dependence on water for reproduction. The first and oldest phylum of the plants are the bryophytes. Bryophytes may reproduce sexually and asexually. Bryophytes have neither pollen nor flowers and rely on water to carry the male gametes, the sperm, to the female gametes, the eggs. The spore capsules produced after the sperm have fertilized the eggs. Hence, the spores are part of the sexual reproductive cycle. Pteridophytes. The life cycle and reproduction of pteridophytes is characterized by complete absence of conspicuous flowers and fruit, the production of minute, fine spores, often in copious quantities, and by alternating generations of separate spore-producing plants, sporophytes, and gamete-producing plants, gametophytes. In gymnosperms, the cone is the female reproductive part, and the pollen is the male reproductive part. Pine trees and other gymnosperms produce two types of cones. The male cone is called the pollen cone, and the female cone is the seed cone. Of these, the female cone is the larger one of the two. Angiosperms. The flower and its pollination. In angiosperms, meiosis has in the sporophyte generation produces two kinds of spores. Microspores, which develop in the microsporangium and which will germinate and develop into the male gametophyte generation. The other type of spores are the megaspores, which will develop in the megasporangium and will develop into the female gametophyte generation. Both types of sporangia are formed in flowers. In most angiosperms, the flowers are perfect. Each has both microsporangia and megasporangia. Angiosperms. Pollination, the process by which plant pollen is transferred from the male reproductive organs to the female reproductive organs. Over the last 145 million years, plant, insects, birds, and animal species have co-evolved. This has resulted in specialization between species and the occurrence of mutualistic relationships. For example, a bird or insect is adapted with the right size or shape of mouthparts to receive nectar, the plant may be perfectly adapted for pollination to occur while the insect is feeding. If pollination is successful, fertilization may occur. Fertilization is the process by which two gametes fuse to become a zygote, which develops into a new organism. The end result of pollination and fertilization is the production of the next generation in the form of seeds which develop inside the ovary. The ovary of some flowering plants will develops into a fruit. If seeds have the correct growing conditions, they will germinate to form new plants. Therefore, as you can see, in the start we had plants dependent completely on water, and as we went along and plants evolved, they became increasingly less dependent on water for reproduction, until we finally reached the angiosperms, which are completely non-reliant on it.
Asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, offspring arise from a single organism and inherit genetic characteristics of that parent only. A single organism makes a copy of itself, and the offspring will be exact genetic copies of that parent cell. The advantages of asexual reproduction. Only one parent is needed. Once the organism is ready to produce, it can reproduce with ease. Secondly, the organism is able to reproduce rapidly to produce many new individuals. Once an individual is well adapted to the area and has successful genetic makeup, it will reproduce many times to form many new individuals. The disadvantages. Plants are genetically identical and are not able to change to adapt to the changing environmental conditions. Whole communities of genetically identical individuals may not survive these changes. Sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, two individuals that make sex cells produce an offspring that has genetic characteristics from both parents. The advantages. Offspring all vary from one another and the parents. This is very important in a changing environment, as some of the new organisms may turn out to be better adapted to the conditions due to their different genetic makeup. The disadvantages. Two parents are needed. This may delay successful reproduction. Secondly, sexual reproduction takes longer, so less individuals are produced. Some organisms, such as flowering plants and simple animals, are able to reproduce sexually and asexually. These organisms can take advantage of all conditions and are highly successful. How flowers are adapted for pollination. Some plants are adapted for pollination via the wind, and others for pollination by insects. Plants that are adapted for insect pollination have colorful petals and nectar to attract the insects. The sticky pollen sticks to the legs of the insect when it visits the flowers. The pollen stuck to the insect is transferred to the other flowers that the insect visits. Plants that are adapted for wind pollination have small, light pollen that can be carried by the wind. They also have feathery stigmas to catch the pollen floating